The stillness of the forest glade was broken by a sudden noise. It sounded like someone crying, "Help!" from inside a tin can, and in a way that's what it was. Sir Tumbleweed was in trouble again. Sir Tumbleweed was a tall, thin knight with bright red hair and a long red moustache that drooped sadly at either end. Of all the knights in merry England, he was the most accident-prone. He was also very nervous. Every time he mounted a horse, he seemed to be a frighteningly long way from the ground, so he'd throw his armoured arms around the animal's neck, off would go the startled horse, and off would come Sir Tumbleweed. Once down, he couldn't get up, and many a lonely hour he spent lying on the ground shouting, "Help!" inside his helmet. This time he was lucky. At the third "help" precisely, he looked up to see a figure bending over him. It was all dressed in black. It wore a tall black hat upon its head, and a long black cloak. A black scarf hid most of its face. All Sir Tumbleweed could see was a pair of grey eyes that stared into his own. A witch, he thought. And he knew, though he had never met one, that he was scared of witches. Sir Tumbleweed lay rigid, convinced that he would be turned into a frog. "Relax," said the witch, "I won't." Curiously, for Sir Tumbleweed had no doubt that she was hideously ugly, her voice, instead of being a harsh cackle, was low and pleasant. "Won't what?" he said. "Turn you into a frog," she replied. "You read my mind," gasped Sir Tumbleweed. "It's just one of the things that hideously ugly witches can do." Sir Tumbleweed blushed. "I suppose you know my name?" "Yes, Sir Tumbleweed." "And you know I've never rescued a damsel or tackled a dragon because I'm too nervous, and never had a tilt at another night because I always fall off before I get there?" "Yes," said the witch. "And I know you need help because you said so. Why didn't you start by helping yourself?" "Oh, how?" "First, take off your helmet." After a struggle, during which his visor snapped shut and nearly took his nose off, Sir Tumbleweed removed his helmet. "Oh, whew," he said. "That's a weight off my mind." "Now the rest," said the witch. Obediently, Sir Tumbleweed peeled off his gloves and undid his heavy armour. "Now then," said the witch, "up, Sir Daisy." Lightly, Sir Tumbleweed sprang to his feet and stood there, in tunic and hose. "There," said the witch. "Does that feel better?" "Oh, yes, thanks," cried Sir Tumbleweed, and he ran trippingly towards his charger, which was grazing close by. He put his foot in the stirrup and swung himself up into the saddle with such abandon that he fell off the other side. The horse galloped away. "Let it go," said the witch. "Clumsy great beast like that is no use to you." "But if I haven't got a horse," said Sir Tumbleweed, "and I haven't any armour, how can I be a brave knight?" "How can you be a brave knight anyway?" said the witch gently. Sir Tumbleweed sighed. "Oh, you're right," he said gloomily. "I'm not brave. In fact, I'm scared of most things." "Let me ask you something," said the witch. "Do you think that to be brave means to be fearless?" "Well, yes." "You're wrong, Sir Tumbleweed. To be truly brave is to know fear and yet to overcome it. Now, suppose you had to face a lion, what would you feel?" "Oh, terrified," said Sir Tumbleweed. "The very mention of one puts the wind up me. Oh, I prefer cats the size of yours." He bent down to stroke the witch's cat, but as he did so, its ears went flat, its mouth opened in a soundless snarl, and its back curved into a hoop. Sir Tumbleweed drew back nervously. Then he saw that the cat was not looking at him. It was looking past him. It was looking at something behind him. An icy shiver ran down Sir Tumbleweed's long spine. He turned and found himself facing a very large lion. His heart stood still. So did the lion, only its tongue moved. As thoughtfully it licked its chops. Slowly, very slowly, the knight took a step back, and another step. Then he felt a hard little hand in the small of his back, and he heard that low, gentle voice in his ear. "It's no use running away," whispered the witch. "He's much too close. You must stand your ground and stare him out. After all, he's only a brute beast." "He's quite a big beast," muttered Sir Tumbleweed miserably. "Couldn't you turn him into a frog? I could stare a frog out." At that moment, the lion opened his jaws very wide, showing an array of razor-sharp teeth. He roared. "Ah!" yelled Sir Tumbleweed in terror. At the sound of this yell, the lion stopped, and an anxious look came over his face. "You've got him worried," whispered the witch. "Now see him off." She gave Sir Tumbleweed a hefty push, and caught off balance, he tripped over his feet and almost fell. He waved his arms madly about in an effort to stay upright. And at the sight of this strange, tall figure cartwheeling wildly towards him, the lion turned and fled with his tail between his legs. "I thought you said," remarked the witch slowly, "that you were scared of most things." I am," said Sir Tumbleweed, mopping his brow. "But not apparently of lions." "But, "No buts," said the witch. "I saw you charge it." "Well, you see," Sir Tumbleweed stuttered. "I see, all right," said the witch. I see before me not just a knight, not just a bold knight, but the boldest knight in England. You do? Certainly I do. No one else could have done what you did. They, couldn't? Never. Despite the fact that you knew fear. Oh, yes, not half. Yet you overcame it. I did, said Sir Tumbleweed. His face, which had been deathly white, turned pink with pleasure. I did, he said. I did. And he puffed out his narrow chest. Do you know, he said, I feel so good, I almost wish that brute would come back. I'd show it was master. I'm awfully sorry, said a deep, rumbly voice. Sir Tumbleweed spun round to see that the lion had indeed returned and was lying close by with a most apologetic look upon its face. I shouldn't have roared at you, said the lion. It was very rude of me, master. He's taken a fancy to you, said the witch. What? Cried Sir Tumbleweed. I see what you mean. Well, he's not a bad animal, is he? Perhaps you could keep him for a pet, said the witch. I say, that's an idea. I mean, other people would be scared of him, even if I'm not. Here, boy, he said to the lion. What's your name? Arthur, said the lion. If you please, master. You aren't going to need that old suit of armour of yours anymore, said the witch. Not while he's around. But we don't want to leave rubbish about messing up the countryside, so perhaps you could better go and pick it up. She waited until Sir Tumbleweed was out of earshot, and then moved closer to the lion. Nice work, Arthur, she said softly. I didn't overdo the master stuff, did I? Asked the lion anxiously. No, it was just right. Sir Tumbleweed came staggering back and dropped his armour with a crack. Whew, he said. Weighs a ton, that lot. You freeze inside it in the winter, and in the summer you sweat buckets. What are you going to do with it? Shut your eyes and count to 10, said the witch. So he did. And when he reopened them, almost all his knightly panoply had vanished. Thought I'd better leave you your sword, the witch said. It was a bit blunt, so I put a decent edge on it for you. Give it a try on that tree. You must be joking, giggled Sir Tumbleweed. But just for fun, he struck at the tree with all his strength, which wasn't much. And to his amazement, the blade sliced through the oak like a knife through butter. Down it came with a mighty crash. Well, I never did, said Sir Tumbleweed. It seems you're strong too, said the witch. Why, there isn't a knight in all the land you couldn't slay. Sir Tumbleweed looked worried. I'm not mad about slaying people, he said doubtfully. But I tell you what I've always fancied. I've always fancied winning a tournament. You know, tipping all the other chaps off their horses. It looks such fun. What else would you like to do? Kill a dragon? You could use your sword for that. That might be fun, especially if the dragon had taken a prisoner. What sort of prisoner? Sir Tumbleweed looked rather coy. A damsel, he said, in distress. Between the brim of her black hat and the rim of her black scarf, the witch's grey eyes twinkled. Bit of a lady's man, are you, she said. The knight blushed. I don't know about that, he said. I mean, I like girls, but they always seem to go for the big, beefy chaps. What sort of damsel would you fancy? Asked the witch. Oh, she'd have to be tall, about your height, said Sir Tumbleweed, and with eyes the same colour as yours, he added gallantly. But she'd have to be jolly pretty, he thought, before he could stop himself thinking it. Of course she would be beautiful, said the witch, and there seemed to be something in the tone of that strangely pleasant voice that made Sir Tumbleweed feel suddenly very sorry for her. Oh, I don't know, he said. It's much more important to be nice than pretty. I mean, you're nice. Thanks, said the witch dryly. I suppose, she went on, if you entered a tournament and became the champion, she wouldn't be able to resist you. She wouldn't, would she? Said Sir Tumbleweed delightedly. Then his face fell. The trouble is, he said, I'm such a rotten horseman. I mean, I'll probably be better without all that ironmongery, but those chargers are such huge great beasts. I always feel I'd be happy with a little horse where I could put my feet down either side if I needed to. And those lances, they're so long and clumsy. A little one would be better. A little horse and a little lance, said the witch thoughtfully. Does that ring a bell with you, Arthur? And she winked. Said the lion. You mean, I mean, said the witch quickly, that I must be off. So Tumbleweed, why don't you take Arthur for a walk in the forest? Good thinking, said the knight. Need to stretch the old legs. Come on, Arthur. Yes, master, said the lion. And when walk to heel, there's a good boy. After all, he shouted back to the witch, you never know what we might find you. Me, said the witch. How could I? Sir Tumbleweed felt very light-hearted. Walking was so enjoyable without the weight of all that armour, and there was nothing to fear with Arthur round. Nothing to fear anywhere, he thought, because now I am fearless. And then he jumped a mile as a bird burst suddenly from a bush. "What's the matter, master?" asked the lion. Not a thing. Just practicing my jumping." And he leaped into the air several times in an experimental way. "Chap has to keep fit, you know," he said. And he drew his sword, and he began to cut and thrust madly at imaginary foes. "On guard," he shouted, "and have at you, and take that, base varlet." Until finally he took a tremendous swipe at a sapling, missed, and fell flat on his face. As Sir Tumbleweed began to lever himself up from the ground, he saw a number of marks in the soft mould of the forest floor, and very familiar marks they were to a man who'd spent his life falling off horses. "Look, Arthur," he said. "Hoof prints, and little ones too." "Perhaps we should follow them," said Arthur, and the lion was off, loping ahead with his nose to the ground. "Wait for me," called the knight, and he ran after Arthur with long, high-stepping strides like an ostrich, tripping now and then over his scabbard, and soon becoming so puffed that it was a relief to see the lion crouching not far ahead. "Found him, master," growled Arthur softly. "He's just the other side of this bank." They crept up the bank and peeped over, and the knight's jaw dropped in amazement. There before him stood a milk-white pony, as pretty a little horse as you could wish to see, yet unlike any other horse the world over, for at the centre of its forehead there sprouted a single sharp spiral horn.